Welcome to the Life of Lore and Legends Dev Panel. I'm Panda. I'll be hosting this with this wonderful group of devs who are going to highlight a lot of the different key phases that make a set, going from the birth to the childhood, adulthood, and retirement as well. We have here set lead designer Julian Cavaraza joining us. We have a product manager Winston Baker joining us. We have finalization lead Ken Wu joining us, and of course, on the cosmetic side, we have Louis Lau as well. So we really can cover the entire range of what it makes a set of TFT. Starting, I think, with you, Julian, when it comes to the birth, the design of a set, what are really the key ideas when it comes to what you're trying to maybe solve, going from set 15 to set 16 in this case?
Well, so obviously we have to ship a set every 4 months. That's going to happen no matter what.
There.
But beyond that, we try to ask, is there a problem we can solve with TFT? Is there something we can do to improve the game, either in the short term or the long term? And Mort was watching the Vegas Open. We love the meta in the Vegas Open, but even with a great meta, endgame screens started to kind of look the same, especially across games. And so he had this idea, hey, what if we just put more champions in the set? And from there, we said, okay, what set theme can include 100 champions? Well, Runeterra is a great choice. We've also never been able to fit all the regions into a set. With Runeterra Reforged, Bilgewater wasn't in the base set, and then we had to remove Shadow Isles in the mid set. So it was really just a perfect combination of a lot of problems we've kind of been running into for a while, and a great set mechanic to go with it.
Is it always so perfect where you have the problem you're trying to solve and the design, the gameplay aspect of a set, and the thematics link up so perfectly? And if not, how do you solve that issue?
I mean, you play test, right? Sometimes you take a big swing at something and it just doesn't work, and then you do something else. I think normally by the time we ship it to players, we're pretty proud of it, though. We would have never shipped something we weren't happy with. Power-ups were very anime-themed. We loved how hacks played into Cyber City. I think we are pretty good at having that sort of confidence when we ship a set mechanic.
That's kind of the... sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would say that it does start from like some point of inspiration, right? Like there's some spark, and then like Julian said, you have to iterate. You test things out, and you actually we call find the fun.
That's more the big picture, though, in terms of the entirety of the set. But looking more, micro at specific champions, how do you make it so a champion fantasy is presented in the best way possible, where you have these iconic moments with certain champions? How do you have that come through in TFT for the different cost buckets as well, in particular?
Yeah, there's so many checkboxes and standards we can use. Do they feel enough like their Summoner's Rift version, right? If Annie or Darius pulled out a gun, that'd be weird. We don't want that happening. But also, do they feel different enough that the player isn't just playing League of Legends again? And so I think Annie is a really great example of that. Setting the board on fire is totally something Annie could do, but hasn't done yet. We need to make sure the characters just feel iconic to themselves, that they're representing what they're about. We also need to be cognizant of their cost. If Annie was setting the board on fire at 1-2, that's probably a lot for the PvE minions to be dealing with.
They deserve it. Burn it down.
And so we need to make sure that a champion feels special relative to where they are in terms of game pacing. The most exciting time they should be is when you buy them.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it's like, depending on the theme, we have certain more restrictions of what we can do with the spell. For example, like in set 8, we can have Mordekaiser drop a building because that's a 5 cost. It's a very different theme of a set. But this one is all about League of Legends, right? We don't want Mordekaiser to drop a building. That makes no sense. And so this one, we make it a lot more resonant to what their Summoner's Rift counterpart does.
And then I would say that was actually one of my favorite parts of this set is we had the opportunity to take these iconic characters who really do have a strong identity. Like people know what is Annie and what is not. But then also because we're not a hardcore PvP game, we have the opportunity to do some things people have never seen before. And so Galio is the most Galio, right? He's hanging out on the bench and then he does the full Demacia slam and that feels so good. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
Even from the cinematics to kind of the same exact, the scene basically coming out every time.
Yeah.
Louis, on the cosmetic side, I'm curious if it's the same kind of problem you're solving when you're ideating for the start of a set. So what are your goals? What is the general mind map or kind of the framework you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's actually very similar to what Julian just described. For cosmetic, we always try to give players more ways to express themselves and create those personalized experiences. So the first question when we were designing for Lore and Legends is basically how could the cosmetic at launch feel differently versus what we had in set 15. And that's really the point where like the tonal expression, like exploration comes in, where we think about, oh, if like Prestige Chibi, Spirit Blossom Ari was about magical, charm, coldness. Could we have something that feels differently in the set? Could we have something that is like playful, confident, really with some attitude and branding those coldness? And so, like, those are the things that we always think about. And one last thing I want to call out, it's also about topical memes, references. I think that's like one of the secret sauce to really make our cosmetic fun. And I can tell you, it's like really difficult to find something that is like work with a champion, work with the fantasy, and also being really fun.
You guys nail it every time, both on the design side and the flavor side with cosmetics. I'm always so surprised how you guys manage to stay true to the identity of a champion or, entire region, maybe Runeterra as well, while also nailing the gameplay and having it all meld together. I think is always, one of the best things about TFT as a whole. Moving though from the birth phase to childhood phase, this is more towards finalization, right before a set launches. I think that would be more on your side of things, Kent. What are the challenges you experience in that phase?
Yeah, so this is kind of the phase where we're in the last 4 months of a set. The previous set has just finished, and so finalization rolls on from set 15 to the next 4 months, which is all set 16. And the team's already put together all of the champions, all the content is already there, and we come in and kind of add like a layer of gameplay health and balance while trying to maintain as much of those like dreamy innovations as possible. And so the stuff that we look at and the things that are like kind of challenging and what we playtest for at this point is a lot of like minute details as we innovate and optimize the game. So like, does this cluster of champions have too much AoE CC? Do we need to move something around so that that doesn't happen? Or even just like these two units have too much melee CC, so you can't play melee units into them, and that makes it really hard. Small stuff like targeting. Where does Shyvana land when she jumps? Because in the 5 cost, like end game, there's Fiddlesticks, Senna, Set. Everyone's like splashing the backline, and no one kills them, but like it does a lot of damage. And so figuring out where we want Shyvana to land, it's like she should be the one that doesn't have as much backline access, whereas Set can have a little bit more. That kind of stuff is what we're dealing with. And then one of the big things that we work really, really closely with the set pod on is redesigns. In case we play test and we find out something isn't really working that well, like as an example, Lux, we knew she wanted the iconic laser from Summoner's Rift. That's like her thing. But that spell has always been a problem in TFT. And so we were trying something new this set. It didn't work out in playtest. And so one of our finalization designers, Philip, came up with this cool idea of like the QR combo from Summoner's Rift, where it's a binding and the laser chips the backline, and the binding like does a big nuke on the front line, so it's more front to back. And it became much more fair to play against and solved a lot of the problems. And so
I also think it's more iconic to Lux. I think in that situation, a better design came out of it. We are not trying to kill fun. We're making the set more fun by doing that.
Yeah.
If only we could sneak the E in there somewhere.
I would also say that's one of my favorite things to watch the designers do is like finalization will roll on and then they start talking to set design. And the question you guys usually ask is like, what's the fantasy? Because that's what we try and preserve. And then we try and find like, what's a healthy way to manifest that in the game?
Is there a relationship where you guys are kind of like the bad guys having to crush the dreams of
that's
design?
me. That's what production does. Yeah, that's me. I'm the bad guy. Yeah.
We have like a meme for it. We were like, oh, finalized, because it's like, but that doesn't always happen, because sometimes it's the other way around too. And so we're kind of the bad guys, but sometimes we also like we play the game so much, and we just want the game to be as fun as possible too. And so it's like a balance in itself of like finding gameplay health versus like just as fun as possible, as crazy as this can get.
And I mean, designers want health too, right? We're not trying to ship Chonk's treasure as the main game buff.
Would you say there's any time in design, Julian, where you guys are having to cut down on some dreams that are not so feasible because it'd be hard to really fit in the game in terms of balance, in terms of we saw, for example, with Lulu, the monster trainer, was very difficult to have that work out perfectly because of how complex it was. Is that ever the case in design?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Sometimes you shoot in a specific direction and it's just not really compatible with the game. It could also be that player taste is moving. What maybe would have worked in set 6 maybe doesn't work in set 16. There's a big gap there. But we want to respond to that feedback. We crave making the best version we can. And so we're very happy to kill things. I think across set 16, we probably redesigned like 40, 50 champions at some point or another.
100 champions with so many champions.
40, 50 doesn't make it sound like we started from scratch, doesn't it?
It's also like a lot of quick shifts and things like that. They're just like, oh, it would be really cool if Set was a Vanquisher, and eventually Set's not a Vanquisher anymore. But it's like stuff like that we just the idea, we learn from it, and then we evolve it to something
It
better.
survives, but just somewhere else in the set. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
We also make trades, right? Graves originally both of his autos and his main damage were very AoE heavy, and it wasn't really good at killing single targets. They said, hey, can we make his spell AoE? And I was like, can we just keep the autos as AoE? That was fine. Everyone was happy with that deal.
Yeah.
As long as there's that negotiation there, we're both trying to work towards it.
There's also a really cool thing that happens during our playtest phase where like we'll be playtesting different things and you're like, that's not quite right, that's not quite right. And then you'll have a day where like we make a change and it just clicks and it's like, oh, that is correct. And then you get like a lot of momentum behind that.
I have a selfish question, Lewis, for set launch. I've always wondered this. What is a general idea and game plan internally between Chibi and Unbound Little Legends? What are the goals you're trying to hit? What are just the general idea around them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know a lot of players have the same question as well. So basically, if you think about this, Chibi and Unbound, there were very different ways to express the champion fantasy. Chibi naturally kill, so whenever we do Chibi, so we think about what should we deliver in terms of the tone, the mood, and feel to players. We think about what about that cuteness of Chibi can dial up for champion fantasy, and then we just lean on that way. And while making sure, like the guys mentioned, that particular Chibi is stay true to the core champion identity. For Unbound, it's really different. Like Unbound, as the name suggests, it's a ultimate power fantasy. So whenever we do Unbound, we really think about, okay, so which champion is particularly good in terms of like expressing that power fantasy, and then we use Unbound as a medium to basically push for that. And every single time we look at a set, for example, set 16 launch, when we think about, hey, should we do Unbound, should we do Chibi? We always think about, okay, we have a very diverse preferences in our player base in terms of what they like, what tone they love. So we try to get a balance there in between Chibis and Unbound and try to deliver that cuteness versus that badass power fantasy to our players.
And as the theme is being decided for the set and design is being finalized in this period, do cosmetics change? How do you link the design of the cosmetics with the theme itself right before launch, for example?
I guess I look at this question in different ways. So the set theme at the beginning, it's almost like the core of the whole thing. And then you have like cosmetic building up the layers and expanding that set themes. For example, set 16 is about Runeterra, so we have like cosmetics that is connected to Runeterra. The Shuriman Overlook Arena is a good example of that one, that is like around Shurima. And then we have other cosmetic that is like expanding that theme about Noxus, about something else. And obviously the TFT Paris, that was our love letter to
I love that
Paris.
voice so
good. It's
And
so
the
good.
French culture as well. So yeah, we have like all this diversified offer to basically for our players for the different tastes.
Last quick question. Are there some themes that you think are just much easier to work with? You're like, oh, Runeterra, great. We have so much material we can work with.
Runeterra is actually the most difficult one.
Really?
Because you have to make that feel different, but still very true. And then for players, if you are spending the money and just like getting the same thing that you can probably just get from Summoner's Rift, they might not be super happy, but like the challenge is really like how should we make it different but still true.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on to adulthood, this is going to be the next phase of a set, and it's going to be, in some ways, maybe the most important phase as well when it comes to set launch. And from your side, maybe losing some control over the set and it's more external factors and reacting to that. I think this goes to you, Winston, as a product manager.
Yeah.
What are the challenges you feel like the dev team faces when a set launches for the first time?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things. Because we do a set every 4 months, and we've been working on this set for over a year at this point. We have to figure out like how can we learn from sets that are already live, like can we adapt things? And then a lot of what production and product management does is like we try and make calls about like where can we get a lot of value out of this, like what's worth the changes versus how do we stick to our guns? Because sometimes we'll launch something and we learn a ton from players. Like TFT players will absolutely always tell us what they think, and please keep doing that. We love that. Please tell us what you think. But we have to figure out like how do we react to that and how do we build that into the flow? And so I would say there's like a ton of conversations that we have about what's happening on live, what do we like about what's happening on live, how do we change it, and then I would also say that like part of our job is to find the solution. So like players can always tell us what's wrong, and they're always right. Like they're just right. That's full stop. And so our job is like how do we understand the problem, and then what do we think is a creative solution that can get us there.
I think one good example of like learning from live, especially for set 16, was in set 15 we changed the way prismatic traits work, and set 16 we were trying to get that learning immediately as soon as we can, so we can make a decision on how we want to design the prismatic traits, how do people hit them, what's the frequency, does it match what we want, and so that's how we landed where we were for this set. But yeah, it's just like immediately we try to like learn from it.
Yeah.
I know in some cases there are some big system changes that I feel like you guys try to disperse throughout different sets because it would be too much to handle in one big set. I think the case with item changes in the past that happened when Kraken was introduced. And do you guys feel there is a mental load that players have to handle when a set launches where there's all this extra info, we have to try and maybe, without mid-sets happening now, bring out other big changes at the end of the last set, for example, and not do it all at once, for example?
We try to design the sets with those changes in mind. So set 15 was always made with Roles Revamped, and Roles Revamped was made alongside set 15. They were still figuring out exactly how the mana system was going to work. And we said, okay, great, if we're going to do this, then let's maybe hold these other changes we have coming up in the future. We really are really cognizant of the mental load that players have when there's just so much information. Because even just a new set is 20-something traits, 60-something champions, I don't know, 100 augments. There's so much to learn. And so, yeah, if we can hold back a Kraken's rework, we should hold back a Kraken's rework.
I would add to that too and just say that like there's a really strong balance right between like novelty and consistency. And something that Mort talks about a lot that I really love is like we want players to have fundamental TFT skills, and those should be persistent. But within our mechanics, that's where we have an opportunity to play and add something new that feels really fresh, that feels really different. And the best, I think, mechanics are the ones where like your fundamentals really apply, and there's something cool. And so again, super biased because I love lore and legend so much, but I think like that's part of the magic of this set is if you are fundamentally good at TFT, those fundamentals will carry you because the mechanic itself plays into how you should play TFT. And I think that's awesome.
And that's where intuition can kind of help navigate new changes and a new environment overall. Adulthood also brings about life balance, and this is obviously maybe the most talked about part of TFT publicly, for many reasons, of course. Players are very invested in their ranked games and what is strong, what the meta is. How do you guys navigate balance as a whole? What is the general process? What can you share about the kind of inside work of how balancing works in TFT?
Ooh, balance is hard. It's as we try to do as much balance as we can before the set comes out. Finalization handles a lot of that, but then once players get their hands on it, they play the game so much, and the fun of TFT is optimizing, figuring out how to get all the value that you can on your board and beat other players on that kind of stuff. And so as players optimize, we have to try to keep up and do patches. But the players optimize real quick and they figure out things real fast. And so it's this kind of struggle because we have to lock patches 1 week before the patch actually comes out. So like let's say it's Wednesday the patch comes out, Friday is localization locked, so we can't make any more text changes from there. And then we have the weekend to like figure out data, play some games, figure out what's developing. And then Monday and Tuesday, we're making the patch and locking it in essentially. Because at the end of the day, Tuesday, we're done and we had to go hands off. And so we try to get as ahead as possible of what's developing and try to really figure that out using all the sources that we can. Ultimately, sometimes players will lock on Tuesday, Thursday, this Vayne comp shows up or something, hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
Something shows up, and then that's when we have to do micro patches. We figure out the trade-offs there, and that's a lot longer of a process.
I'm still impressed we caught the Diana Gwynsu's build. I saw a tweet about that. 2 hours later, it was patched. I didn't play it once before it was nerfed.
Good.
It's still fairly strong.
It's still good.
It's still fun.
Still
You can
good
still
though,
play.
for sure. So.
Talking about perception of balance, I think this is also an important metric. It's not just the data if something is high VP, low VP, but also the perception if something like Diana, for example, seems strong, so it's frustrating to play against in some cases. How do you guys deal with balancing perception and the actual data, the actual metrics?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, Mort has talked about this before, how we look at like 3 different things when we're doing balance. It's data, perception from players, and our own experiences. Data for obvious reasons. Player perception is like, there could be something that's balanced or even weak, but it's just players are always complaining about it. And it's like, well, there's probably a problem here. Can we do something about it? And our own experience really points us to what could be a problem. within the thing that players are like upset about, or within the thing within data, and then that helps us inform us on what to change. Just as a hypothetical example, it's like using that Lux example from before, and this is all hypothetical. If Lux fires her Q and she's supposed to hit, the binding's supposed to hit 2 frontliners, but in this like weird case with certain positioning, she skipped 1 frontline and hits the backline, and then that laser nukes the backline. That's not supposed to happen. That's not the design intent. And so then we just know, hey, we need to widen this thing. It's not working the way it should be. And so the experience really informs what we're supposed to do. That's an extreme example, obviously.
Well, and sometimes friction is good for games, right? Fizz is supposed to be public enemy number 1. And so we are happy if players are complaining about him. I think it's just about matching design intent. That's the goal.
Yeah, we have these goals from the beginning of design, and it's like, yeah, we always knew players are gonna hate Fizz, but... Yeah.
I would also add one other thing that I think like it's hard to remember as a player, which is that there are so many players around the world. Different regions actually have really different metas and different reads on what balance is. And so that's why I really like the approach that you guys take, is like it lets us look at all the different regions and be like, hey, we're actually going to balance all of that, because something that's OP in EU might not be in China or something like that, right? So it's like this huge audience that you really have to think about.
Yeah, and even between ranks, we have to think about that as well.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, what's good at gold versus what's good at high rank.
Exactly. Yeah. And
For cosmetics, Lewis, there's a rolling schedule, I believe, with how cosmetics are released. They're not all released on set launch. You have, kind of drip feed of cosmetics and different options for different players. How is that decided? How is that organized? Is there an intent with certain cosmetics being released at the beginning and others at the end of the set?
Yeah, so basically the way we look at the different patches of a set, it's like we think about those as like different moments to celebrate different fandoms. So the set launch on and off itself, it's like a big moment. And then from there, we want like different fandoms to have their own thing that they can celebrate, they can use. So we look at things like real life cultural moments, things like games, events happening in the game industry, across Riot, what we want to do for players in TFT as well, what they love. And so we look at those different patches and slot those moments in first. And then we think about, okay, so for this particular moment, what kind of a tone, fantasy that we want to fulfill for players. And then we pick and choose the characters and thematic that would deliver those fantasies. That's basically it.
Have there ever been moments where there's a certain comp or unit that is public enemy number 1, and then a chibi gets released of that unit, and you're like, oh no, we're going to get the target on our back?
Yeah, so I think from that perspective, like I mentioned, the cosmetic is really an expansion on the like what you have within the main set and the main gameplay. Good. So it's good for you to get the units in the gameplay and also get a chibi.
Yeah,
I love the Devil Teemo chibi, right? Where the evil laugh, yes!
was a big part of the Vegas Open as well. That was obviously great to see.
Iconic.
Moving on to the final phase of this cycle of life, the retirement. This is maybe the part where there's more retro, there's more learnings. I'm curious how this works with multiple sets are being developed at once, I imagine, with the rolling kind of cycle.
Yeah.
Are there ever times where you guys take learnings from, let's say, set 16 and have already decided a lot of the design and the ideas with set 17 and have to kind of retroactively go back and adjust things on the fly?
Like all the time. I would say that's like a constant feedback cycle. So in the same way that we're learning from sets that are live, I would say any set that is coming, like the next set, which I will call 17 because we number them, 17 is already talking to Julian of like, hey, what's working, what's not working, like what should we adapt to? What do we think is going to be really resonant for players? And what do we think we have to pay forward? And so I would say that there are sort of like 2 modes of our development. One is sort of the R&D, and that's really where the set designers shine, is like, what's the fantasy? What do we want to make? And then the second piece is what Kent does, which is the live service piece, which is that TFT is a living, breathing game, and so things are changing all of the time. And if we can't adapt, then they get stale. And we don't love that.
We've also never shipped a perfect set, probably not going to soon. And so we do look and say, what just didn't work? Like, what flat out, we just shouldn't be doing this again. And if that's coming in the next set, we do our absolute best. Like, can we mitigate this? Can we remove it? We do what's called design retros, and we take them pretty seriously.
How much of the development and the learnings is it just you guys are trying to make big risks and innovations in this space? Obviously, being the leaders in the auto battle space, there isn't anywhere else you guys can really go for inspiration. You guys are the ones inspiring, I think.
Yep.
Is it hard to sometimes swing very far out, miss, and then have to deal with that feedback and the negativity, and then have to learn from that, for example? Or do you guys prefer taking those risks, maybe it won't work out every time, but when it does, it's a really magical moment for the team.
I think now that we're at 3 sets a year, it's fine. If you don't like a set, you can come back within a very short period of time and play a set you probably will fall in love with. I think it's better for us to be taking big swings and be doing great things and occasionally trip versus just release set 1 over and over again.
Yeah, it's really like this fine balance, and we have to figure out where we want to spend our calories to take these risks, because we put a lot of effort into making those risks as good as possible, basically, to mitigate anything that could go wrong. And so we only have so much time to focus, and also as we stack more and more risks, the whole set becomes a little bit riskier. And so yeah, it's all about figuring out where we want to spend everything and what we want to kind of keep staple.
It's that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard to find, but
But when you do, it's magic.
Yeah.
With cosmetics, is there a similar retro, Lewis, where you guys learn from what maybe sold more, what was more popular with the players as well?
Yeah, so like we talk about cosmetic release things like every single patch, right? So we do that retro immediately. Like basically, if you launch something today, then we start getting player feedback, understanding what's set better, what's set less, what players like about, what features can highlight certain things, what not work. Because our team put their heart and soul in every single piece of cosmetics. So the sort of like cycle of even making one chibi, it's like months. So the sooner we can get those feedback from players and understand what works for them, the sooner we can improve on our cosmetics.
Interesting. When it comes to retro, I want to go back to the development side and design side, because I think probably the most important retro learning ever was set 6 augments, and then the decision of augments staying in the game. What does it take for a mechanic in TFT to, where's the lever for popularity where it's to be like, okay, we're obligated to do this every set from now on because of how successful it was or how important it was for the game as a whole?
I don't know if popularity is necessarily what I would use as a metric. There are times when a set mechanic is so great, but it is dominating onto the game. It takes up all the power budget that if we were to keep it around, we could just never make another set mechanic ever again. And for what it's worth, we struggled a bit when augments stayed evergreen. We were like, what if we took away one of the augments and made it a hero augment, portals? And I think if for something like unlockable champions, it would need to solve a problem permanently for TFT that we felt was worth justifying. And are we willing to trade complexity for this, right? Is there anything we can do to make the game simpler if we're going to keep it evergreen? I think that's what's more important. Is the complexity viable for us? And is this actually going to do good things for the game's power budget?
And there's the other side of the coin too, of like, when there's a good thing, we can take it away for a little bit and it's still really great when it comes back later. It doesn't need to stay in the game forever. Players can have their fun with it. They'll move on to the next cool thing that we're going to innovate on. And then, maybe in like 4 sets or whatever, we bring back
Players love Chosen?
headliners.
Yeah, headliners was great.
Yeah.
I would also say that I think the goal of a mechanic is not, can we make an evergreen feature? The goal of a mechanic is like, can we make a really exciting set? And so I would venture that the correlation between the best mechanics we've ever had versus things that stayed around are not 1-to-1. Like sometimes you'll have a set mechanic that could be evergreen because there's so much in there. There's so much space to play. It adds so much to the game, but that's really rare. And I think very reasonably, you could have an excellent set mechanic that was great for a set. And like you said, we would bring it back later. And then that novelty is like fresh again.
It also can't take up too much of the kind of system space where players have to think about it too much or warp the gameplay.
We already got so many systems. There's systems everywhere,
I think in this case, especially with this set, with Unlock coming in as well, with so many champions, I think it's good to not have an extra layer like power, for example. It would be way too much to handle from the info side of things for players as well. Any last thoughts with retirement in terms of anything you guys want to mention that you guys think are important with learnings, with just the feedback from one set once it finalizes?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that I would say is that I really love this set. I really love, I think we poured so much love into it. I think everybody did. And so I hope you all love it, and I hope you play it, and I hope it's really special for you.
Thank you so much to all of you for joining us here for the Dev panel. Hope all of you enjoyed as well here in Paris and always at home as well. It's rare to get insights so deeply and so detailed about the entire process for the game that I think we all love to play. In my case, a lot. So really happy to have you here. Hopefully we have more chances in future Opens as well to have more Dev panels like this to hear from all the different parts of the Dev team as well, not just design, not just finalization. I think it's every single part of the team that makes TFC the game that it is and make it so successful globally. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all here in Paris as well for joining us for the dev panel. We'll have a lot more cool stuff happening throughout the day with dev panels and with show matches and all the competition as well. So thank you all. We'll throw back to the desk now to Necker and the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.